So I just wanted to thank all the speakers again for helping out with this session. As I mentioned when we got started, this was a conversation that began about 4 years ago, and I've been really fortunate to work on this with a number of really brilliant people. The speakers today are a small group of that collective. But there's a number of other folks in the room that have attended one of these place summits that we put on to kind of get us to this point. If I could ask those folks to stand up or kind of raise their hands so they can be acknowledged they've attended. So I'm putting targets on all of these people too. So, and Aaron's in the back of the room standing already. So go talk to those folks as you see them as well, because this has really been a group effort and a lot of thinking has gone into this. So with that said, we're all also kind of about 70% through a deep dive in collecting the essays to put a book together on this idea and to kind of push the project forward. So you can pay attention to that a little bit at hashtag Tactical Cities, and keep an eye at placesummit.com. That's we're in the works of setting up our next gathering to move this idea forward. So with that, we have a little bit of time left for some questions and discussion. So do we have any hands for some questions? Silence.
It's a pretty broad topic to,
it's a broad topic.
To dive into.
Shall we stand up in front?
Yeah, let's. This is a casual thing. So, one hand. All right.
I know that there are some. My name is Emily Brown. I work for the International Economic Development Council in Washington, D.C. So I kind of speak for the enemy sometimes at CMU because I speak for the economic developers, but they're an important part of placemaking. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is financing and how that happens. And I know that there's going to be some sessions at CMU talking about financing. But when you talk about incremental urbanism or funding different types of the Next American Urbanism, how are you going to do that in the kind of context of the banking system that we have today?
We're not. With cash.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of the ideas that are discussed kind of break things down into reducing the scale at which a lot of these things are happening. So,
Who are you?
Well, Bruce, you know very well who I am. I'm Matt Lambert, a partner at DPZ, and have been involved with NextGen for many years. I think that what this group is collectively trying to address is that a lot of the roadblocks that are inherent in the funding mechanisms and the process of economic development today are based on the fact that we're looking at a scale which is actually out of human scale in the way that we're trying to do that. And it's not just saying what we're trying to build and how we're trying. That it's actually a different calculus. And that's why Jen in her slide says we need a different calculus to actually address the problems, because they're really in fact based on the disconnection that we have from each other. And in doing that, then we can actually leverage our neighbors, leverage our community to build itself up. And right now what we're doing is we're so disconnected that we're relying upon other people to pump in a lot of money in order to develop something that's actually not serving our community. So it's a completely different connection.
So that's happening at a small scale. At the largest scale, the banking industry, this invisible asset class is essentially the underwriting standards have essentially, if you're doing a garbage dump or a mixed-use building in downtown Boston, they get lumped into the mixed-use asset class and sold in the secondary markets. So we're having a conversation right now with a number of people, feds as well as the World Bank and stuff, about how to change that asset class. And Treasury's actually asked CNU to come back with an idea about how to do that. So that's happening from a standpoint, and this perspective is kind of plugging into that. And Scott's got a lot of thinking about how to, both from value capture and sort of at the local level, how do you use the municipal resources really well to get that public-private partnership to work. So
I think that also at the much more granular scale, you're going to see a bit of a step away from money. Money is just a placeholder for goods and services. And I think that you have a lot of American municipal default right now, towns that are going completely bankrupt. And there is no funds. There is no going to the Economic Development Council. There is no getting funds in. So we have the resources. We have the empty buildings. We have the people with the ideas of how to run the businesses, the ability to build their own, or to sew their own clothes, to create their own product, to grow their own stuff in their backyard and sell it. So a lot of it is, how do we bypass that? It's great when we can address the major policy pieces that bring in an actual flow of money, but it's not the primary thing that we need to move forward. So in the same way that tactical urbanism, as Carrie said, is pointing the direction to everybody of what we need to address and how to maybe do it in a more agile manner, you're going to have the same type of thing where we're saying, okay, well, we're broke. My generation, our generation pretty much understands this. We're coming to this with absolutely no assets and a whole bunch of debt. So we have no expectation of investment, zero. If we can get it, if we can attract it, great, and that's the end goal. But we're going to move forward without it. And this is kind of how do we do that?
You want to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm also in the lean urbanism, and when I explained this, I got a sort of scared look from Hank Dittmar. I think that let's think about it this way, that if you have if you think about the evolution of money, people could barter with each other, they could trade things, right? Money is a way of anonymizing trust, so that you don't have to trust the person that you're trading with because you have the money. So it's a way of taking the interpersonal value and basically dissolving it so that you have just the money to transfer things. Now, that can be reversed so that you're thinking, okay, we can maybe go back to barter and not trade in money, which is kind of what Katia was saying. The other thing is that we do have a lot of money in our economy still, so a lot of it disappeared, but we still have a lot, and basically that's recovered since 2008. The thing is that it's mostly being sucked up into big businesses and big institutions and the whole sort of government apparatus. So big is sucking up all of the money, and that leaves us with basically the ability to barter with each other or trade on a very small scale. So that when you want
taxes.
What?
Or taxes.
Taxes? Well, that's kind of a different story, but I couldn't get into that if you really have time. But basically, if you think about investment in local businesses, right? So you have some bank funder wanting to invest in local businesses and help the businesses. What happens is you have this big chunk of money. It kind of takes a dive through the local economy and then comes up, and it's got to take up more than went down in. So you can't put in $1 and get 80 cents back. You've got to put in $1 and get $1.20 back, which means it's sort of diving into the local market and sucking out more than it puts in, which is not necessarily a good deal for the local people.
I also want to, I think part of the context of this discussion is that what we do when we go into a community and are trying to get to them to envision a different future is we say, let's put away the constraints for a minute and envision what we want and then figure out how to get there. So that's part of this conversation is, we're just like you, we're stuck every day in the details of and all the roadblocks. So we were somewhat charged with the question of what would we do if those roadblocks weren't there? And then we can systematically figure out how to get rid of those roadblocks.
And by the way, my name is Glenn Kellogg, and I've got a firm, Urban Advisors, that works with designers doing charrettes. We work on figuring out the market aspect of this and how this stuff gets financed. So,
Also that.
I'd love to give you a card.
Any good MBA can't resist a question about banks and economic development. And what I would, the way I look at that question is, anytime you're talking about potential investment, you're thinking about the risk and reward. And as we are beginning to sort of create a standardized understanding about what the rewards are for investing in this kind of asset class, while we're waiting for our governmental institutions and our banks to catch up on that, people who are doing projects are gaining more success by breaking those projects down into smaller chunks. So if you ask me to jump to the ceiling, I cannot do it from here. But if I build a step, from that step, my chances are a lot greater at reaching that ceiling. And this is what we're doing with projects by bootstrapping the initial stages, for instance, and beginning to demonstrate that project can create value. Now we've actually reduced the amount of investment that's needed to get between that point and the finally realized project. And that reduces the risk and also opens it up to a lot greater number of banks and investors who can contribute the capital to get projects done.
Thanks. So I want to be cognizant of time. I know we got another session that's coming in here. So I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to come to this session. And we'll stick around and continue the discussion as long as we can. But I just want to let people get to other sessions if they want to. So thanks a lot.